Hey guys, in today's video, we're going to talk about how to shallow your downswing with this top secret, never before seen backswing move I'm going to show you guys here in a minute. All right guys, so let's talk about how to shallow out the downswing with this top secret, never before seen backswing move. Obviously I'm kidding a little bit about this, but there's some level of seriousness to this, something that doesn't get talked about a lot that can shallow out your downswing. So maybe not quite classified as top secret, but something maybe some of you haven't heard about before. So moving forward, how can we move the club during the backswing to make the downswing shallow out? The main component that you need to understand here, and something we're going to do more in-depth videos about, is this equal and opposite theory, okay? What I'm saying is that whatever you want to do during the downswing, you're probably going to have the best chance of doing that if you do the exact opposite of it going back. Whatever you want to do during your downswing, do the exact opposite of it during the backswing. Okay, I hope that that sinks in here. So let's kind of explain that a little bit before we talk about this move. So at the top of the backswing, what are the pieces that I want to do to shallow out my downswing? Well, let's start with the club and work our way to my body. The club, the grip, the shaft goes from whatever angle it's on to a flatter angle. That would be shallowing. That's how you define a shallowing of the shaft, right? Here's my angle I start with. It gets flatter or more laid down, okay? This way. So look at what my arm and my hand have to do, my left arm specifically, to do that. Here's where I'm at. Now, what do I have to do to shallow it? Well, there's two key parts here. My glove, or the back of my left hand, goes more towards the sky than it was during the backswing. My glove goes more towards the sky during my downswing. Keep that in mind. Number two, my elbow went from wherever it was to pointed more horizontal, less towards the ground, more away from my body, okay? So far we have the club shallowed. My back of my left hand went up towards the sky. My elbow went away from me in this direction, okay? Now, if we look at just those two pieces, what are the opposites of that? What's the theory? If I do the opposite of that going back, I'll get it coming down. So we said my left hand went up towards the sky. What's the opposite of up towards the sky? Down towards the ground. So when I make a backswing, if I get my back of my left hand going more down towards the ground during the backswing, it's going to be easier for it then to go more up towards the sky going back. Now look at the orientation of things when I do that. Watch what happens. Back of my left hand more towards the ground. Notice how the club face is different in space than what you might expect. Where's the club head relative to hand? Where's my hand at in general, right? Back of left hand more towards the ground going back makes it go more up coming down. That's point number one. Point number two, and what the top secret information is here, is about my left elbow, okay? So I'm just gonna put a little T in here to give you some illustrations. So when I go back, we said to come down, my back of my bottom of my elbow goes away from the target, right? So I'm rotating my whole shoulder, but it's really my left elbow is going this way. So what's the opposite of this direction? That direction, right? So when I go back, and I'm gonna just put this on the front of my left elbow here, here's what happens when I shallow it. It goes this way. So can you see that? Here's where I'm at, it goes this way. So what would I want going back? I want the opposite of this way, which is this way. So the front of my elbow now, I just switched gears here, the front of my elbow, the longer the front of my elbow points away from that going back, the more it's gonna point that way coming down. The more the front of my elbow points this way, going back, or more towards the camera, the more it's gonna go in that direction. The same's true with the bottom, right, my elbow. A lot of people, when they make their backswing, their bottom of their elbow points away from them going back, right? Imagine that. Well, that's not gonna work. If I said to shallow it, I want my elbow pointing away from me, and equal and opposite. If I point my elbow away from me, this way, this part of my elbow, this way, on the way back, I'm gonna get what? The opposite, steep going back. So what could I do during my backswing with my left arm, with my elbow, to get the opposite and get the shallowing coming down? Well, I'd have my elbow point much more towards the ground or even slightly behind me. Here's me feeling my elbow pointing more straight down towards the ground. Notice what that does here with where my left hand is. Notice about the club shaft and all this here. This back of my left hand is more towards the ground or away from me. this elbow here does not rotate this way, doesn't rotate up and over here. You see that lays the shaft down. Not gonna shallow that. I wanna keep this elbow pointed towards the ground, or even reversing the opposite way going back, like this, right? This motion here. The more I do this when I go back, right, the more that I'm gonna get the opposite when I come down. That's the top secret move. See how it changes my club in space? That elbow goes more down towards the ground. Back your left hand pointed more away from me. That's gonna make it easiest when I go back. Those are the first two pieces we have to keep in mind when we're talking about shallowing out this downswing. There's another piece of this, and it's where my hands move in space. So during, again, equal and opposite here. If I want to shallow the shaft, what do my hands do? They go downward and they go towards the ball, right? Down and towards the ball target line. These two pieces is the movement during my downswing. So what do I need? Well, I need the opposite of that to happen during my backswing. If I want my hands to come down and out, right? So they're probably going on like a 45. What do I need them to do during the backswing? What's the opposite of down? I need them to go up. What's the opposite of out? Back, okay? Now from the top, I'm saying if I did nothing else, the more my hands would work out independently of anything else, the more the shaft would lay down, okay? Of course they don't go straight out, okay? That's an exaggeration. But the more they work out as I go, what happens? The more the shaft lays down if I want it to. Well, if I want my hands to work out a bunch coming down, what do I want them to do going back? Work in a bunch, right? I want my hands to work in when I go back, right? And to put this together, think about this for a minute. During my downswing, to shallow the shaft, my hands work out this way and the shaft goes horizontal. Hands go out, shaft goes horizontal. What's the opposite of those two pieces? Hands going out, shaft laying down horizontal. I want my hands to work in and I want the shaft vertical going back, right? If the shaft's gonna lay down, coming down, I wanna have it the most vertical going back. That's gonna be the opposite of that. So from the top of the backswing, right, the point here is that the hands work out away from you as they go down, but they work out this way and the shaft lays down this way. To shallow the shaft, my hands work out and the shaft lays down. Hands out, shaft horizontal. And I'm telling you, you want equal and opposites. What is the opposite of that? What's the opposite of hands going this way? The opposite of hands out is hands in, right? Hands work in this direction. What's the opposite of the shaft laying down this way? It's the shaft going vertical. If I wanted to make a backswing to shallow out my downswing, the two most important pieces I would have in there is I'd have my hands work in a lot, and I'd have the shaft be very vertical. If I had to bet my life on it, I would have my hands work in the most, and I'd have the shaft the most vertical. Hands most in, shaft most vertical is gonna do what? Well, from there, how do I get back to the golf ball? My hands are gonna work back out and the shaft's gonna go back down vertical. What kills shallowing the shaft is the opposite to that. If my hands go out and the shaft lays down, you're going back in this direction. You want hands in, you want shaft vertical during your backswing. That's the top secret move, man. If you do that going back and you let the club go, the club's gonna shallow out. Now the back of my left hand, the elbow, those things, those are reference points. If I want to get my hands in the shaft vertical, I want to feel that. I want to feel the back of my elbow down towards the ground. I want to feel the top of my elbow more up towards the sky. I want to feel the back of my left hand in this direction. All those pieces do what? They make the shaft vertical and they make my hands the most in. Do that and play around with it. Just practice it on the range, not on the golf course right away. Make your hands go the most, if you struggle with getting the shaft shallow, make your hands go the most in back, make the shaft go the most vertical and swing from there and see what happens and record it. And those are the pieces during the backswing to shallow the downswing. We've talked before about the body motion, and that's part of it, it's half of it. This is the arms and hands. If you want to shallow out your downswing, this top secret move that's not really so top secret is your hands need to work more inward. The shaft needs to be more vertical, okay? The elbow, the hand are just functions to do that, but those are the two pieces you need to focus on. I hope that that makes sense. Try that out. If you guys have any questions, leave a comment down below.